has allocated money. It's not little money, but the problem is that it's so fragmented. The bursaries are so fragmented. You have some going through the ministry, others going through the various cadres of politicians, others even going through the Kenyatta Foundation. And basically, the basic concept of a bursary is that a bursary is given for needy students. It's not like a scholarship. And the distinction between a bursary and a scholarship needs to be made clear. Because I've seen some allocations, people saying they are financing bright children. A scholarship is what is given on the basis of academic excellence as a grant. A bursary is given on the basis of economic need. So there's been a misconception in our counties on the ground whereby you'll find mainly the MPs. Sometimes they give bursaries on the basis that this is a high-performing kid, therefore it qualifies for a bursary. No. A bursary is given on the basis of the education being a right and some people being unable to access it. And as a duty bearer, the state steps in to make sure that that right is realized for all. Now, with the fragmentation of our bursary and the personalization of the bursary into the body of the politicians handing them out, you find that we get major problems whereby bursaries tend to be given out. First of all, in an opaque manner, you don't know how much money has been allocated. There's no system of accounting for it. There's no system of auditing it. And then number two, the amounts given are very, very small. They cannot change anything. And because politicians are out for numbers, they can even put up a tent and invite millions of people to come and be given pittance in exchange for support. And then, of course, it's a big media event. So I fully support the motion by saying that anything that goes towards supporting needy children should be consolidated and placed in the hands of the Minister for Education or the PS or the Ministry for Education to be administered on a needs basis, and the needs to be objectively realized. And more so, I would like to comment about these two funds. The National Government Constituency Development Fund, Ng-Cdf, and the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, Ng-Cdf, which have been used largely as means for distributing money, the bursary funds to needy cases or to the grassroots. You'll find that these funds are fraud schemes designed by the National Assembly members to steal from the public. And I say that to begin with, that they are a fraud scheme because they are unconstitutional. If you look at our Constitution, and if you allow me to read it, Article 206, it very clearly states that there is established the consolidated fund into which shall be paid all money raised or received by or on behalf of the national government, except money that A, is reasonably excluded from the fund by an act of parliament and payable into another public fund established for a specific purpose. B, may, under an act of parliament, be retained by a state organ that received it for the purpose of defraying the expenses of the state organ. There is no provision in the Constitution for creating these fraudulent funds like CDF and GAF. I say that because they end up being funded from the consolidated fund. The architecture of the Constitution is that if you set up a fund, you must show where the money will come from outside the consolidated fund. So when you come up with a fund like, let us take the fund we are fighting over, a fund like the insurance fund for health. It very clearly states that the money will come from premiums. So, other than everything else that we are fighting over, Chief, that particular aspect of Chief conforms with the Constitution that it will be funded from premiums. When you get CDF, they are taking money from the consolidated fund. You cannot use the consolidated fund to fund a fund. They should show us where money for these funds will come from. It cannot come from the consolidated fund, because there are only two ways that can be done. So you'll find that The Ng-Cdf and the CDF funds have been used in an unconstitutional way to get money out of the consolidated fund, and that's a fraud scheme. It's a fraudulent scheme to steal money from the public. Further, my lady, Madam Speaker, you find that we have got this other thing that is going around now. They want to entrench these funds into the Constitution. It cannot be done without a referendum because it is going to alter the structure of the government of Kenya, whereby legislators have been allowed, whereby legislators will be allowed to hold money and execute functions. That alters the Constitution of Kenya the way it is structured, and it comes in a way that the National Assembly is pushing it, they are pushing it in such a way as to think that they don't need to go to a referendum. They must go to a referendum if they want to entrench any funds in the Constitution. As for the oversight fund, I don't think that the senators have been consulted, at least I'm not aware that there's been any consultation in this House, where it was agreed that the Senate Oversight Fund be entrenched in the Constitution. All senators wanted is not a fund. They just want to be facilitated to do oversight work. They don't need to create a fund for that. So we don't need to have money going into a fund. First of all, where shall we get the money? What kind of tax will finance that fund? Or what kind of levy? Are you going to introduce an oversight levy so that we can fund the oversight fund? We are not. So it's my prayer, Madam Speaker, that the National Assembly allows the Constitution of Kenya to operate. They are creatures of the Constitution. They cannot purport to put themselves above the Constitution. They cannot purport to disobey court orders. The courts have issued orders declaring this particular fund unconstitutional, the two unconstitutional. So there can be no basis for them to say that by public participation, they are going to override a decision of the court. And that can only be done if there's a referendum that will change the structure of the Constitution, especially on the doctrine of separation of powers. I will also want to raise the question of governors giving out bursary funds. Bursary funds, the functions of governors is ECD and TVETs. When they begin giving up bursary funds for primary schools, secondary schools, and colleges and universities, they have absolutely no basis for doing that. And I want to congratulate the Controller of Budget when she came up clearly and clarified what the law is. If you go around the counties, most counties, the ECDs are in a horrible state, the TVETs are in a horrible state, but because it is more attractive to be seen to be issuing bursary checks around as a publicity stunt, you find governors are into it, MCS are into it. What we want is that all these fragmented bursaries be abolished and the money be given to the central government and education be taxpayer funded. And it can be done from primary, from ECD, up to first degree in the university can be taxpayer funded. Countries that are much poorer than ours are doing that. They are funding education. Even our neighbor Tanzania, you don't pay through the nose to get an education. Our neighbor Uganda, you don't pay through the nose to get an education. So we will pray that Kenya being a much stronger economy, we should be able to fund the education of our children, because the human resource in a country like Kenya, which is largely a service industry, the human resource becomes very critical. And we must be able to ensure that we get the engineers, the doctors, the accountants, the lawyers, the teachers, and all those professions that we need to be able to develop this country. We have also, most of the time, you have had people saying that at independence, Kenya and some of the Asian tigers were at power, Kenya was better. But if you go back and look at the development trajectory, you'll find that these people invested heavily in education. Like you get disciplines like engineering were heavily funded, and you can see what they are doing today using skills to colonize the world. The Chinese are colonizing us here using skills. They are building amazing things. They embraced education. They funded their education. Today, you get that somebody trying to be a doctor has to pay through the nose, has to be dragged through the mark to be able to get a grade. We cannot develop this country unless we focus seriously on the youth and their right to education. And that right must be taxpayer funded. We are not at a point where we can enjoy the luxury of saying that let education be accessible to those who can pay. No. We must have education for all so that irrespective of where somebody is born, if he is our Einstein and is born wherever in this country, he must have an opportunity to be tapped. He must have an opportunity to develop. And so, as I continue supporting this motion, I urge that we consider the possibility of introducing taxpayer-funded education. And the motion could be expanded to include that, going forward, the national policy, the public policy of the Republic of Kenya on education should be taxpayer-funded education from ECD up to first degree. And I say that because when you look at why the Constitution wants people to pay, like under Article 48 on access to justice, it says give the fees, but let the fees be affordable. When you come to the rights of the youth to education, there's no fee expected to be paid by the consumer of the right. The right holder is supposed to present themselves at an institution of education, and they're supposed to get taxpayer-funded education. They should not go queuing and begging politicians to be given a pittance in the name of accessing higher education or accessing any form of education. So I fully support this motion and pray that this House adopts it with the necessary amendments to entrench the requirement that education be taxpayer funded. At least, even if you can't make it to the first degree, let us be taxpayer funded up to secondary level. And when it's taxpayer funded, it should cover everything, not just tuition. It should cover even school uniform and school books. And we should return a system whereby school books or the school equipment are clearly branded to avoid theft and misappropriation. So I really urge this House